It is so incredibly important in your dating relationships to find and date people who are on a similar level to you. Now, no, this isn't to do with any of that superficial shit that no one cares about. This is people who are on a similar level to you when it comes to emotional regulation, how they deal with conflict, emotional maturity, how far they've worked through their attachment wounds, if they do have any, because we will always regress to the mean in our dating relationships with our romantic partner. So when I say regress to the mean, if you're leagues ahead in whatever element that is core to who you are and what is needed to function in a relationship and frankly build a healthy relationship, if you're leagues ahead, you are at such a high risk of shrinking pains. Not for everyone, it's more risky for those with histories of trauma or abuse in whatever way that may have occurred at whatever stage of life. And then if we look at this through the avoidant discard or abrupt breakup or ghosting lens, sometimes the growing pains can actually be a factor that can push avoidants to eject themselves from the dynamic. Because it doesn't matter if it's growing pains or shrinking pains, if someone is sort of too far ahead of us or behind us, it creates internal stress. So a lot of the times, if you are leagues ahead of, say, your avoidant ex or the person that you're in a relationship with, you may be feeling the pressure because you're shrinking. They may be feeling internal pressure because they feel like they need to step up and grow. Now, this doesn't apply in every situation, and I'm not in every avoidant's head, but having historically been a fearful avoidant and also recovered from being on the other side of this dynamic too, if there's almost this pressure to level up or step up, where one person is so far ahead emotionally or maturity-wise or career-wise, whatever it is, even if the person is not doing anything to make the avoidant feel this pressure to level up or step up, aside from just existing and maybe having some boundaries or trying to enforce some boundaries, this can trigger such immense shame and insecurity in the avoidant to the point that they just nope out. It is unfortunately super common. Like, how often do you see and hear people saying, oh, my ex downgraded? Now, not to be disrespectful to the next person they immediately jump into a relationship with, I actually feel sorry for a lot of them these days, as they're probably nice enough people as well, but the avoidant will often be using this person for emotional regulation because they cannot do it themselves. So with the downgrade label, which is a bit rough, but I can understand why people use it, it's often because this new person doesn't challenge or trigger the shame wounds in the avoidant. Not to mention the emotional bypassing and dopamine chasing the dysregulated avoidant is often engaging in. And this is also why you see so many rebound relationships fail after the dopamine and oxytocin high begins to dissipate. And I don't want to spend too much time on this because previous episodes have covered these topics a little bit more in depth. So like episode 8, we looked at dysregulation and the neurochemical onslaught of what causes some of the impulsive post-breakup behaviors. What else? Episode 5, we looked at a bit of the neurochemistry again and why breakups can be so dysregulating. And episode 2 and 3, we looked at how many of these frog in boiling water scenarios can actually develop. Avoidant attachment, coupled with love bombing, coupled with ADHD and early emotional intensity. So there's more to unpack in those podcast episodes if that takes your fancy. Okay, so how can we flag if this relationship dynamic is driving my growth or driving self-abandonment? Some easy questions to ask yourself and reflect on. So question 1, do I feel safe to express my needs, my boundaries, and my emotions, or do I fear their reaction? Question 2, am I growing more into myself or becoming less visible in my own life? Hobbies, friends, work, all of it. Yes, relationships do change our social dynamics a bit, especially in the early phases of dating, but there's healthy supported change and unhealthy suppressed change. Big difference between the two. Question 3, do I feel energized or lighter after time together or after tackling a vulnerable topic with my partner? Or do I feel depleted and heavy? A subtle sign, but it's a big one. And question 4 is somewhat related to question 2. Have I become disconnected from the things that matter to me? Friends, creativity, health, work, hobbies, all of it. And lastly, look at the big picture from everything we've discussed. Ask yourself, am I making myself smaller just to maintain this connection? If it's growth, it will feel like expansion, even if it's a bit uncomfortable. Our growing pains. If it's shrinkage, it'll feel like compression, even if it's familiar. This is our shrinking pains. So if shrinking pains are what you're experiencing, how can you reclaim your growth? Now, there's a belief that healing can only happen inside a relationship, or that we need to be fully healed before entering into one. But both extremes actually miss the point. Some healing can definitely happen in relationships if both people are self-aware, safe, and ready. And again, if you're both on a similar level. If the gap is too big, remember, more often than not, we will regress to the mean, and you can essentially become a parent to your partner. And no thanks. Been there, done that, bought the t-shirt, never want to do it again. Remember, you want a partner, not a project. But other times we need to do the work solo, not because we're broken, but because we're becoming whole. And sometimes the work we need to do is what needs to happen so we can actually build a safe, stable relationship. So whether you're single or in something that feels off, ask yourself, am I growing here or am I shrinking? Because love shouldn't shrink you, real connection expands you, and your light shines brighter. So just remember that you can't date potential. You can't heal if you're not safe. You cannot thrive if you are doing all that you can to survive. And you'll never be able to step into your fullest self if you are in a relationship dynamic and you are doing the emotional work of two. That's emotional regression. It's not growth. Now, if you want to deep dive this topic a little bit more with me, episode 9 of the Reconnection Code podcast is available now on YouTube or Spotify. And lastly, don't forget, if any of this content has been helpful to you, like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow.